Out there, Dan here from Geekcast Radio, doing another Marvel Fresh Start review. This is where I've been going through all the Marvel Fresh Start titles, giving you my thoughts and opinions on them, and trying to answer two key questions. Number one, is it any good? And number two, is it actually a fresh start? And we're really winding down to the end of the new Fresh Start titles for the most part. This is really the last one after Fantastic Four, and now Punisher #1. We've kind of had all the major Fresh Start titles come out. There are some new series debuting, and we have Uncanny, but technically, I think when looking at just what is actually getting in quote-unquote on Fresh Start, this is really the last big one to come out. And this was somewhat delayed or will be delayed because of change of artist. And it's a little bit different because Matthew Rosenberg is actually continuing this series. For a lot of the Fresh Start titles, we had new writers, new creative teams come in. With this, Matthew Rosenberg took over Punisher in Marvel Legacy and did his War Machine storyline, and now that's concluded, and now he's continuing again. So the question is it actually a fresh start if you have the same writer really continuing the story he's been building? And I think for a first issue, the answer to that question is actually yes, in the sense of if you pick this title up without reading that previously, you'll be able to follow it well enough. There are certainly pieces that are coming into play and motivations of why things are happening, but as a story, I think it's pretty straightforward regarding what Punisher's trying to accomplish. He's usually a pretty straightforward person, so it fits his personality. Now the question of, is it actually any good? Is it a good book? And I am a person who was a huge fan of the War Machine storyline. I thought it was a lot of fun. Perhaps it was a little bit absurd, but I thought that was okay. I guess I just felt like we needed a story about a man going to a country and inflicting some harm to some corrupt political figures and coming back. And I thought it ended at a good point when he finally gave up the armor. I thought it was a good way to bring that story to its conclusion. This first issue I thought was not to that same level. Honestly, a little disappointing. I will say it worked better for me on a second read. After reading through it the first time, it felt a little disjointed. We actually have these two concurrent storylines going on, and one begins with this this hijacking of this ship. And what we kind of see is this hijacking leads to a series of events, or the purpose behind it isn't just to kind of steal things, but there's more going on here. There's this really rather convoluted plot going on, really, with Baron Zemo really at the helm of trying to get everything kind of in play. Really, that's kind of the two key elements of this. It's called, the storyline's called World War Frank, where Frank Castle and Baron Zemo are really head to head. Like, Frank Castle's trying to really take out Hydra for what he did during the Secret Empire. For those that don't know, during that run, he was actually an agent of Hydra. Many people had problems with that, but the reasoning behind it for the most part was that he was so trusting of Steve Rogers that that's what kind of converted him. Some people may still question that, but again, that wasn't tied to this really in the sense of that was a different writer, but they're just kind of taking that and really, I think, cleaning it up in a way that's necessary. And what you see, there's actually a lot of government bureaucracy in this, in a terroristic sense of the manner. What we see is that that hijacking leads to this meeting in Switzerland, which is all about trying to use that hijacking as a piece of leverage because they're threatening this man's family to try to allow this facility in the United Kingdom to be built through this Ruxin Corporation. So it's like they basically are using leverage against the man in Switzerland to threaten his family to say, let's allow this corporation to be built, because Ruxin was a company that's working with Zemo, and they're also trying to use this to get votes to legitimize the country that Baron Zemo is currently at. So I don't know if I fully understood why Zemo needs to do all this, like what his end game is. I mean, we're still in the process of learning his story. That's something we could find out. But I did feel like there was a pretty big disconnect between like this story and the Punisher story, and it does kind of converge into one main point in going forward. But I thought that aspect of it was very heady. It was a lot of dialogue, and I guess that's the point because it's dealing with bureaucracy, and that's kind of often what happens. But I thought it was a little bit convoluted compared to just the straightforwardness. But I think there are some really good points in this, and one thing that I think I didn't like as well, I was not a huge fan of the art in this. I thought it was relatively really inconsistent, and a big reason why, the faces for me were a little bit too photo referencey, especially like in this sequence. You can see just that guy's this gentleman's face just feels off. It looks like it's disconnected from as actually like facial hair. They don't look like one and the same. And I'm not a big fan of that style. That's more of obviously more of an aesthetic choice than a criticism of the execution per se, but at times when, especially background characters, they just looked a little sloppily done. There just wasn't that emotion looked like it was off or it was ill-fitting for their face and often at times match the motion of their body. It's like, their face was still and kind of stoic, but their body was moving, so it just seemed like a little bit off in that sense. And at times just there was lack of depth with the background, so everyone felt like they were kind of on the same planet. But there were some really good moments with the art. I'll say that. It wasn't all miss. There were some really big hits. Usually anything dealing with the Punisher. And I'll say one thing. I did like the way he did draw the Punisher. The action was well done. And there's actually one sequence I found was really fantastic in this. And I'll spoil it a little bit. But it actually, this, for example, this car chase, that was huge. That was exciting. I did thought, it had that big momentous feeling to it, like you want in a Punisher book. But the one standout sequence was actually in an elevator, and it's dealing with kind of. I'm a sucker for sequential art like this, where you have someone at one location and they're kind of moving through, and bit by bit, like kind of going down the elevator, going down each floor, and taking out people, gathering guns. His pile of guns on the ground gets higher and higher. I thought it was actually quite clever. I thought that was, to me, the standout moment of this entire book was that page. And there are some. I do like the fact that he doesn't draw. I actually feel like he draws Punisher better than anyone, and that he doesn't draw him like John Barenthal. Because sometimes that did happen in the War Machine storyline, and at times like that can personally take me out of it when I feel like I can see the person they're referencing. It wasn't photo reference, but it certainly was modeled after him. But in this, though, the Punisher did almost look more like Ray Stevenson than it did John Barenthal. Again, like the action itself was kind of crazy intense. There were the Punisher's main focus in this seems to be, this mission is all about getting what was the supplies on that ship. So that ship, like, being hijacked, I thought, okay, well, that'll come into play, and it does, but not necessarily in the sense of this is Punisher going to the ship, but it all kind of led up to him getting these crazy, insane guns, and there's a purpose behind it. He's not just trying to kill someone. He's kind of going beyond his normal realm of just going after street thugs. He's bringing it up to another level, and I don't know if that's in reference, not just because of Hydra, but once he got the War Machine armor and he got a taste for kind of dealing with things on a global scale, he's like, well, now I can't let that go. I want to have that same impact, even if I don't have that firepower behind me. So I do like that idea, kind of taking Frank Castle globally. It's not like it's never been done before, and it's again falls in line with what Rosenberg's been doing in his first issue of Punisher way back when he took over the title. I really enjoyed his letter when he was talking about his take on Punisher, and he had this line that I think kind of still sticks with me. It's the idea that the Punisher, Frank Castle, is a really simple question or answer to a really hard question, and sometimes that bluntness is messy, and things can happen, and there's in that messiness, that's where a lot of the conflict, a lot of the drama can ensue, and I think that's kind of happening here. And I kind of like where it leaves off. I will say it does deal with an assassination, which I don't know. When I think Punisher, I don't necessarily think him assassinating people. I feel like it's his style is a little bit more up close and personal. At the same time, he's still a soldier, and I think his game is bigger than it's ever been before. So I do like the idea. I'm a big fan of Zemo, Baron Zemo as a villain. So anytime he shows up and we see him going against Frank Castle, it does intrigue me. I'm not a huge fan of the way he's drawn in this. His garb, like his face garb, it looks very sticky to his face. It's like it's soaking wet, and it's like a wet towel on his face, because like you can see his like mouth and facial structure, which is not usually how it's depicted. I think, and that's choice. It's not a huge deal, but it does seem a little odd to me. He almost looks skeletal, more so than he should. So overall, I like, there was bits and pieces of this I'm like, oh, this is great, this is what I want, and then there's some things that would detract me, and perhaps it was just high expectations of going into it, but like I said, it's one of those situations where it's disappointing but still good in that sense, or at least has aspects where this could become better and perhaps be a little bit more concrete, a little bit more better put together moving forward. Now that we kind of have our main conflict is kind of let off and basically goes off with a bang, as they say, and now we know who we're facing off against moving forward. So if you hated the Punisher War Machine storyline, I don't know necessarily if this would bring you back in, because this isn't, again, Frank Castle. This isn't Garth Ennis style of Frank Castle in the sense of him dealing with mobsters. It doesn't really. And the other piece that I kind of hope gets more into this is that one of the best things I like about Frank Castle is not just that he goes in shoot guns a-blazing, but he does have more of a tactical mind and being able to display that. In this, we haven't really seen that. He certainly can kick a lot of ass. He can shoot a lot of guns, and he has. But it seems like it's just kind of going head first. Like his plan isn't really. It's based upon more luck than actual planning. At least what we're able to see on the page. Now that can change moving forward. We don't know all of everything he's laid out. Certainly was successful at what he attempted to do. But I think that's where you can make Frank Castle more of a rounded character, and taking some smaller moments and really getting into why that choice he made to go to Hydra, or why he's regretting it, and in the War Machine armor storyline, we did get those. So, but I think at this first issue was all about, let's skip the big and the bold, let's make people excited for what's to come, and I think it accomplished that well enough. I do have those concerns about the art. It's not photo referencing in the sense of Greg Land or Salvador LaRocca, where I can see the actors that are certainly being betrayed. But just the facial structure, the acting, it wasn't as strong as it could have been, in my opinion. So, all right, well, let me know your thoughts and opinions on the first issue of The Punisher. Are you picking up? What are your thoughts and opinions of Marvel Fresh Start now that we're like 4 months into it, and we're kind of really, I think, going forward, this will be the last really new title, unless things change. But, all right, that's it for me. Just remember, comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one. Until next time, thanks for watching.